Hello and welcome back to the best podcast on planet Earth. We are Dark Screen Society. We are back and we have our regulars. Brian, say hi, Brian.
What up?
And we have Seth, say hi.
Good morning.
And we have somebody new on the podcast. Who is this over here in the left bottom corner?
Are you a believer?
We have Chuck today as Mr. Reed here, which if you have not guessed from the title and you just blankly or blindly clicked on this, we are talking about Heretic today, which already came out in the UK. I feel like this never happens where it came out in the UK earlier than in the US. That's so rare. So it's already out in the UK, but it hits American cinemas November 8th, which we are dropping it on the 8th. So but a lot of people have seen it early. They're doing a lot of advanced screenings of it, which is where I got to go see it. So let's dive in to Heretic. Can somebody give us like a little synopsis? Seth, give us a synopsis on Heretic.
A synopsis on Heretic. It is about two women who are members of the Mormon Church, I believe, and they are going from door to door spreading their sweet word, trying to get followers to join them, and they end up at a person's house who wants to convince them that otherwise on why religion and different things have other meanings. And from there, it gets very scary. And yeah, that's without getting into spoilers yet. I think that's the best way to describe it. They run into Mr. Hugh Grant.
Seth learned from last week after everybody chastised him for getting into the spoiler in the first 3 seconds.
Yep.
So okay, no, that was perfect. So our main cast in the movie, it's a really small cast movie. We have Hugh Grant who plays Mr. Reed. We have Sophie Thatcher who plays one of the missionaries, and then we have Chloe East who also plays one of the missionaries, which I'm very familiar with Hugh Grant and Sophie Thatcher, but I wasn't familiar with Chloe East. Were you
Me either.
guys like have you watched her in any other movies?
I've
never
Or
seen her
shows?
before. But I was excited Topher Grace was in there. I was like, that looks like Topher Grace.
Oh my God,
and then
same.
He goes to the door and I was like, is that Topher Grace? Like, why has he got such a tiny part in this movie?
Yes. I thought the
Chloe-
same thing.
Chloe East was in The Wolf of Snow Hollow, and I didn't realize that it was her until I looked her up after viewing Heretic.
She was in that?
Yeah,
Wait, who was she?
She was.
I love that movie, too.
She was Jenna Marshall.
She was Jim Cummings.
She- oh wait, was she the other? Was like she the other officer?
Yeah, in The Wolf of Snow Hollow. Yes.
Oh my God, really?
Really?
Why did that
yes.
not?
She looks about 12 years old.
No,
Yes.
literally. But you know what? It's so funny when you look her up. Like she looks so young and Heretic, where I'm like, oh, you literally could pass as like a 16-year-old. But then when you look up photos of her, she is like a bombshell, and I'm like, oh my God, like it's so interesting what like a costume and like a character can do for you. So
Just to inspire
Okay.
you for going, Gigi, Chloe East is
Yeah.
an American actress and dancer. She gained popularity from YouTube. So
Oh, wow.
oh, so
Could be
I
you-
have
could be you
I have
next.
hope. I know that could be me. I could be the next Chloe East.
Little
Um,
inspiration. Yes.
So oh yeah,
My
go ahead.
headphones died for a second, so I was replacing the battery. Did you say she was 16, Chloe East?
No, my God,
Okay, I was
no.
gonna say I caught that at the end. I was like, there is no way.
You-
Wow, she looks
Seth-
much older than that. honestly.
Seth had a panic attack. He was like, "Hold on."
Hold on a second. What?
No. I said she looks 16 in Heretic.
Yeah.
And like, but then if you actually like look her up in other roles, or even just like thinking about her and The Wolf of Snow Hollow, I'm like, oh, she looks way older. So that's funny. Okay, so Heretic, what? Let's just go into like our what do we think about it before we get into spoilers, because really it's a movie that it sparks so much discussion. I honestly have like it's been a very long time since I've seen a movie that heavily sparked a discussion on this. So, Mr. Reed, aka Chuck, what did you think about the movie? If you had to give it a score, what would you score it?
Out of what?
Out of 5. Let's go with 5. Letterbox ratings.
It's a 5. Gave it a 5 out of 5 on Letterboxd.
Ooh,
Excuse me.
okay.
I gave
What
it
would
a
you
5.
what would you give it out of 10?
10. It's my favorite horror. It's my favorite movie of the year. And
Really?
and I don't say that. And listen, my number 1 and number 2 are not going to be changed, and the only thing that can change them probably is Nosferatu. which I haven't seen yet,
Fair.
obviously.
Yeah.
And The Substance is my number 2.
Yeah.
And the only reason The Substance isn't number 1, because I do think it's so fucking brilliant. Like, I would put it with, if somebody said to me, what's the best body horror movies you ever seen? I'd say The Fly, The Thing, and The Substance. Like, it deserves to be in that conversation. I love religious horror. I love anything that has to do with religion, the dichotomy of it. Like, so that's why I put Heretic over The Substance, because it's one of the most brilliantly written religious scripts that I've seen, and I don't even know how long. Like, I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I could totally see that. Honestly, it's like up there for me. Brian, what are your like just initial thoughts and your rating on it?
I'm my rating is open because I just watched it this
Oh.
morning, and I'm unconvinced it's as good as everyone's making out to be. Not that it's bad. I think it is good to really good. I just don't think it's phenomenal. I don't know if you remember when we were at Fantastic Fest, we were chatting to somebody. I won't name him just because I don't want this might come across as negative, but he said it's like a Redditor's version of religion, and that's stuck in my head. And then I watched it, and I was like, okay, I can kind of see that. But
It's a hereditary version with
no,
religion.
a Redditor, as in somebody from Reddit.
Oh, a redditor. Okay, okay.
Yeah,
That's
and I was like,
your
okay.
Irish accent came out.
Yeah.
Okay. A redditor. It was a redditor's version
enough.
of religion.
Yes.
Okay.
But we'll get into
Interesting.
that more in spoilers. But
Yes. Okay. So your rating is open. What's your initial when you walked out of the cinema? What was your like?
3.5.
Oh, okay.
That's
all
where
right.
that's where a lot of people are at with it.
Really? Okay.
I am.
Steph.
I'm open to be convinced that it was deeper and better than I thought, because sometimes I just see movies at surface level, and then I like watch on rewatch or speaking to people. It changes, same as you guys with Hereditary. Like on rewatch, improved.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping you can tell me what I missed.
I also like I kind of want to have a discussion too because I have noticed that other people from other regions of the world feel differently about this movie than people like living in America. And I'm so curious because I feel like America is very, and I don't know because we're so egocentric. I don't even know anything else about other like religions of the world, like just very surface level. So it's like, it's so deeply ingrained in our society and like just like in our politics and everything that it's I feel like it hits a little different for Americans, but I don't know. That could be very egocentric of me. So I do want to have like a discussion on that. Seth, what did you think?
I agree with that too, what you just said, Gigi, and I think it's gonna hit everybody differently. Like, there's something in that movie that's gonna like elicit some type of emotion from each person, and I'll get into why it affected me later. I know me and Chuck talked about it over text, but for me, I gave it a 5 out of 5 as well. I think it's my favorite A24 horror film and movie. Um, I really love the message that they were trying to portray without forcing it down your throat, and it was just
Mhm.
like it was very beautiful, and that ending I thought was awesome. And it was just like the perfect mix of comedy and horror.
Yeah,
Like,
no, 100%. I love this kind of like comedy in horror where it's just so it's natural. It's just funny like his character. So, okay, before we get into spoilers, who was your favorite character in the movie? Was it Hugh Grant's character, Sophie Thatcher? Was it Chloe East? Who was your
why
fave?
why does Chuck look like he's so angry over there?
No, I'm just listening
He's
and taking it on. And I have a lot to say, so I'm
He's
just
just,
listening.
just blocking me on
Yeah.
all platforms.
I
Just
know,
know he's
right?
like
No.
He's like,
he's over there
"Okay."
writing a
My
burn
fucking
book.
crying.
He's like,
I-
"Don't trust this fugly
No,
bitch."
I knew when we left the theater that this was going to be an incredibly divisive film. I said that in every time
Oh,
I've spoken
yes.
about it on the internet. I knew that there would be people that wouldn't like it. I knew there would be people that loved it. I knew that people would be confused and be in the middle, because it covers such a weighty topic, such as religion, that is a very controversial topic because everybody perceives it in a different manner. So it's going to get a lot of different mixed feelings. I just think the way that it was done was so fucking brilliant, in my opinion.
So, Chuck, who is your favorite?
I think Hugh Grant should be nominated for an Oscar. I think he
Yeah.
was that good. I think he was like not that he needed a revitalization to his career, but I think this is as a magnificent performance as when John Travolta showed up in Pulp Fiction. Like, you know, something completely different. He was a hitman. It was different than like a lot of stuff that he did. And this is so different for Hugh Grant. And he takes that Notting Hill fucking I'm getting into your pants charm with this devilish, wickedly almost evil afterthought to the perplexity of that character. And like I thought so long, like, who else could have did this? Like, after seeing him do it, and like, I'm sure other people could have did it, but he was fucking brilliant. Just
Yeah.
Have you not
brilliant.
seen Paddington 2?
I love Paddington too.
Like he's creepy and evil in that as well.
Listen.
So like we knew he had it in his.
I need to watch
arsenal.
Paddington.
He was also
Me
good.
too.
He was also good as the Oompa Loompa in Wonka,
Yes.
which was
Yes.
like,
I won't watch Wonka, but yeah.
well, it kind of like stole the movie for me because like it was like comical, like, oh, Hugh Grant's an Oompa
Yeah.
Loompa, but
He
like
was the best part of that movie.
he fucking slayed it. Yeah, he certainly did. Yeah, he was great.
That was one of the letterbox reviews that really stuck with me. They were like, "How could this Oompa Loompa be so vile?" No, and I totally see that because honestly, it was nice seeing him in this role because he does like we've seen him in roles where he does have like an edge to him, but he's really never been in anything like outright horror. I mean, he's been in like
Mhm.
2 other movies that were horror, but literally I have no fucking idea what these movies are, and I
What are
would
they
bet you
called?
let's see, ready?
Yep.
This one was from 1988 and it's called The Lair of the White Worm.
Apparently
It's-
that is incredible.
Chuck's seen it. Chuck's
It's
seen both of these.
Fucking phenomenal.
Yeah.
And then the other one is also 88. So he was like, after 88, he was like, no horror for me. It was Rowing with the Wind, which in total has been watched by only 1,000 letterbox members.
seen it.
So
No, I've never seen that, but Lair of the White Worm is a Lovecraftian story, and it's
Yeah.
fucking brilliant.
it looks it, yeah, just from like the little
And it's
poster.
more of an erotic thriller than a horror movie.
Oh, we love those around here.
Like
Just
Um,
let you know.
so then, okay, so I love that. So we really haven't seen him in a lot of horror or really ever. And yeah, I like that we were able to get the sight of him. Brian, who was your favorite?
Well, I expect good from Hugh Grant and Sophie Thatcher because they are both talented and I like them and everything I've seen them in. But I'd never recognised. Is it Chloe East? Was that her name?
Yeah, Chloe East.
I was very impressed with her that she like stood shoulder to shoulder, maybe even better than, well, maybe not better than Hugh Grant, but shoulder to shoulder with Sophie Thatcher, which is a hard job because Sophie Thatcher's
Incredible.
on her way to superstardom, I think.
Yeah,
So
she's
yeah,
perfect.
Chloe
and
East.
flawless
Well,
in
she
every
wasn't
way.
she wasn't my favorite character, Chloe. I don't think she was the best in the movie because that's Hugh Grant, but she should hopefully get recognition, which she might not because Hugh Grant was so fucking good. But I hope
Yeah.
she does.
Right.
Seth.
I'm with you on that. I thought Chloe East was phenomenal. And I honestly at first was like, oh, this is going to be like Sophie Thatcher stealing the show. And then like
Yes.
Chloe East came in and was just like, nope, this is my role. And she just ate that shit up.
I 100% agree with you. Like same for the same reasons. Like I knew Hugh Grant was going to be great
Mhm.
and he was absolutely fantastic and he had this like he was able to balance this like being menacing but then also like charming and like almost like there were moments where you did feel kind of safe where you were like, "Oh, why would I be scared of this guy?" you know? And then I knew Sophie Thatcher was going to be great, but I feel like her character is similar characters that she's already played.
Yeah.
So it didn't surprise me like that her performance didn't surprise me. I was like, "Oh yeah, this is great." And she's played characters like this. But Chloe East to play a character that's so like timid and meek and reserved and like awkwardly like on edge. I feel like that's so hard and she played it so naturally. Like
Mhm.
so naturally. And yeah, even when we get into the spoilers part, like there was a point where I was like, "Oh my god, I love this girl. Like this is an incredible
Yeah.
performance."
Her like
yeah.
arc too throughout the movie was just like every change and what she went through was just like magnificent. And you could just tell like through her like body and her facial expressions. I just thought she did such a phenomenal job.
Yeah, she was
Yeah.
so freaking good.
I thought they were
Um,
very convincing. I liked
Oh
them
yeah,
both.
all of them.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Did anybody buy the A24 candle? Blueberry
No,
pie?
I asked for
did.
one.
Oh, I
Oh, wow.
I bought one. I was like, do I spend
Well, they
$40
didn't.
on this candle? Yes.
They didn't say yes. I just asked for one. So I'm like, it's
You're like,
40 bucks. You could send me something. You know what I mean?
you're like, hopefully.
Mhm.
Okay, so now everybody that's listening, we're getting into our spoiler segment.
Get the fuck out of here.
I need to make like a little like a chime or like a in Terrifier 3 I did the Christmas bells. I'm gonna do like a
Church
cooking
bell.
timer. Ding. Oh, or a church bell, yeah. I was thinking pie.
Oh.
I'll do a church bell. So this is our spoiler section. This is gonna get very deep and heavy because I do have a couple of questions for you guys that are going off the script. I mean, we don't even have a script today, but Chuck, you have so much to say. So for our viewers, let's just do a little like a little recap, almost like a quick 2 minute spoiler. So obviously the movie is about these two missionaries. They go into Hugh Grant's house because they're trying to like convert him to Mormonism because he requested more information. But he is like this. What did he say? He was like a lit or like a philosophy major or
Mhm.
professor or something. And so he's been studying up on religion and beliefs and everything like that. And it's been like his whole career has been studying this. And so he kind of brings people into his home to study their beliefs. And in the end, realize that what he feels is the one true religion is what? Let's say it with me. 3, 2, 1. Control.
No.
You
Yeah,
guys,
that's right.
you botched that.
Yeah, we did.
I know that.
Control.
So it had a very heavy message in the movie where it was like you think it's so deep in like or it's very like deep in its religious message, but then also on its I guess just message about religion. So Chuck,
I have a question. So,
yes.
and I would like to ask this question to specifically Brian. Well, you too,
Ooh,
Gigi, because you're
okay.
both under the fives. Which I listen. I respect your
Hey, I'm
opinions.
a 10 out of 10. I'm just
Listen,
kidding.
you are a 10 out of 10. At yapping. But anyway, so Brian, and this is
Yes.
full spoiler, so I have a question. What do you think happened at the end?
Oh, okay.
The
And then I
very
want to know what Gigi said.
from what part of the end?
From the from Mr. Reed going down, from what happened to Mr. Reed on.
For when he got it in the throat.
Yes.
Yeah, what do you
Going
mean?
straight to the
Okay.
ending. We're just going straight to
No,
the
but
ending.
but this will bring it to the beginning. Like the
Yeah.
end brings it to the beginning for me because I think that's the interpretation that I have.
What do I think?
Do you think the girl just popped up and saved her friend and they got out of there? Like as basic as that, as it appeared?
Well, at first I thought, oh, maybe she's resurrected because that's what he was trying to get done. But then I thought she faked it because it looked like she just got nicked in the throat. It didn't look like an actual like kill wound.
Right, and kind of played possum.
Yeah, so I thought
Mhm.
that at first because she put they foreshadowed the stick before, so I was like, that has to come into play later
Mhm.
with the spikes. And then obviously the girl escapes and there's a butterfly in her hand, and then it's like, no, it's not. And I was like, okay. But to me, like she just escaped, but then she is thinking now, oh, that's my friend on my hand. She's come back as a butterfly. And then I don't know what happens after that, whether she's questioning everything, but
Gigi?
I don't think she died.
Okay, so I had two different interpretations of this, and I don't know. I think it's supposed to be left to the audience to
Yeah,
actually wonder what
absolutely.
is correct. Because my initial reaction was that Sophie Thatcher, when she gets nicked in the throat, it's not like at her like jugular or anything. It's like right in the front of her throat. And it's a pretty like it's obviously deep, but it's small. And so I was like, okay, she kind of just like, yeah, bled out for a little bit, lost consciousness or played possum. We did foreshadow the stick with the nails. So then at the end, when Chloe East's character and Hugh Grant are there, and then Sophie Thatcher comes back to life, I thought that she just like didn't like resurrect. She was just like, oh, I'm coming to and I'm going to save my friend and knock him out. But then dies. And then she escapes. However, when I was discussing it with my friends, we had such a like long discussion about it, and we were like, okay, what if she didn't what if Hugh Grant and Chloe East's character like they all died, including Sophie Thatcher. Like, they all died in that moment where he, like, lays his head on Chloe East's chest, and they actually were supposed to die down there. And then the part with Sophie Thatcher was really just, a callback to what the prophet was saying, how, like, when you die, you kind of like you are in this dreamlike state and you're sensing that things are happening, but it's not like actually happening. And so I we were like, okay, maybe that's what happened with Chloe East's character, is that like she actually did die, and in this like after, after she died, she is having this vision of Sophie Thatcher's character saving her. She escapes. She sees Sophie Thatcher's like hand or butterfly on her hand, but she didn't actually like, they all three died down there. So I kind of lean towards like they all three died down there.
I'll preface what I want to say is like I love that from both of you, but so you get and this is what I think the disconnect is for certain people, and this is not at their fault. It's just the perception of how the movie is laid out, which Beck and Woods, I'm a fan of their writing. I thought A Quiet Place was fucking brilliantly written. Haunt is brilliantly written. So they wrote this and directed it. So the whole entire movie, like, a lot of people were saying in their reviews that the first half really hit them and it was so well done. And that, the way that the story unfolded, and then it slips into like this, I heard words like mediocre, basic, regular horror movie, or, it falls off in the second half. I didn't get the third act, or the second act let me down, like things like that I've heard. So if you take a step back to the film that you watched, the tagline on the poster is question everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's a methodically put together film that gives the viewer, this is to me, that gave me, I'll speak in terms of I statements. I viewed this film as it was so brilliant in the first half with the setup of how he brought out the board games and did the fast food restaurants, and how all these religious subsets regurgitate basically the same thing and put it in different packaging to get people to join. And then when you get into the music, so you have these songs that are all top 40 hits every single year, but if you take the lyrics out of them and put the lyrics of last year's top 40 song into it, they're all like the similar tempo, because that's what gets people listening to the radio to blow these songs up, because they're basically all the same thing. And the juxtaposition between that and the fast food, and tied in with these different religious subsets, so you have all this information that you're just sitting there engulfing for the first good hour of this film. So what would a smart film do? It gets you off your guard. It slips into this cat and mouse thing where they go through the doors and then they're stuck in this typical horror style like dungeon, and Mr. Reed like goes off, basically off his rocker because of what he's trying to convey to these girls, and it slips into this, sort of kind of descent into madness. I think they're all dead.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why it made me cry. Like, it literally made me cry. And also, like, Sydney cried. I think that the Nick killed her.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with what the prophet said, because they reiterate the afterlife several times throughout the film. And I think that the snow was a representation of like the clouds that she was on. And where do butterflies come from? They come from caterpillars, and butterflies are symbolism of new life. So therefore she passed on. The other girl was the angel. The butterfly landed, and it showed her that it was her new life going into the afterlife. So therefore this horrible situation that they went through was actually the thing that freed her soul and set her into the afterlife, which is what they believe in the first place anyway. So I think the whole entire setup was there the whole entire time, but it went from convoluting it to you to like lightly spoon feeding it to you to this crescendo that could be taken in two ways, because maybe it is as basic as she popped up, saved her friend, and then they just got out of there and they were trapped for this long time. But like, for how smart the beginning was, I have a very hard time accepting that, because why would you just drop it off with this basic ass ending after you gave us all this stuff? Because like literally when the music thing happened and he started playing the song with the other songs, like I realized like the light switches flash through my head, the wallpaper, the doors, the carpets, the figurines that he was carving, like every single thing that he did, the blueberry pie, it was all with methodical purpose. So like, why would the end not have this methodical purpose that tied it all together? And like, that's why I think it's so brilliant, because like it really just fucking landed for me. Like, and I can understand people it not hitting that way that would knock it down. But like, I think this is a film that you could watch 4 times and question your interpretation of the time you viewed it before, which also to me makes it a brilliant film, because it's a conversation piece. It's not just smile to. It's not this basic thing. We knew she's going to jab herself in the head and fucking die and affect other people. It's talking about something so precious and philosophical to so many people that it gave you a very precious and philosophical, you know, psalm type kind of ending. You know what I mean? Like, and that's it leveled me, because I think it's one of the most brilliantly written pieces about how important religion is to people, and how religion can hurt people, how it can help people, how it can save people, how it can condemn people. Like, it gives you every single aspect of what it really is and how it affects us in our society. And I thought that just, it was, I love it. Like, I wish I could watch it again, like right now, because like that's how much I loved.
Come to the UK.
How fucking smart it was. You know what I mean? Like, because it and I want to believe that. Like, I like once as soon, because like I was kind of like, I even tapped Sydney in the theater before the butterfly, and I was like leaning on the, oh, she just jumped up and it's this generic ass she saved thing, and I'm like, fuck. And then the fucking butterfly appeared and it fucking clicked in my head, and I was just like, oh shit, she's in, you know, heaven or whatever she feels is the afterlife. You know what I mean? Because that butterfly is new life, and like, I thought it was so fucking beautiful to me.
Can I just
See, I interpreted it the other way. Let me get in here first, Brian. Okay,
I know,
let me
I just
jump
have
in here. Go ahead.
He's arguing with me, so I'm not
Yeah,
arguing.
sure.
No, I'm not arguing.
Convincing me. So I will say that I really like that, and I can totally see how it could be that, but that ending wasn't the reason I didn't love the movie. Like, either ending is still going to give me the same sort of feeling about the movie. Maybe it's slightly better with your ending. But it was other things before that was kind of ruining my love for the movie. But we'll get into. But like, I do really like your end. If that's the way they've done it, I missed that, but it makes total sense, and I really like it. In which case, I will probably half star it up. But yeah, we'll get into the other issues after Seth.
I'm interested to hear your other thing. Yeah, Seth. So what did you interpret it as?
I thought that the butterfly was just her friend telling her that she's okay, and that like Chloe East's character survived. That's how I pictured it. I definitely can see like the 3 of them dying down there. That's definitely a great interpretation of it too. I think, like you said, you can interpret it so many different ways, but for me personally, I want to believe that she survived, and the butterfly was kind of like the, you know, her friend is okay, she's gonna be okay, type of ending is kind of how I wanted to interpret it.
Yeah, and I
You
don't
could
think that's like
say-
a bad way too, because she even said, she was like, you know, I'll come back as a butterfly and I'll land specifically on their hand. So it's like, it's not bogus to be like, well, then wouldn't that happen if only she was alive and her friend was dead? Because like, why wouldn't she just see her friend in the afterlife?
I can see why that's confusing, because it just vanishes. But you could also interpret that this is like she's survived something super traumatic.
Right.
She's questioning her faith. And then like the miracle to her is, I got out here, there's a butterfly. So the butterfly might just vanish, but it might be like, here's just me reminding you that what just happened, like everything is real, like faith is real. So this is your miracle. It's a butterfly, but it's not really a butterfly, and vanishes.
I also love that.
Yeah, that's like how I interpreted it. You took the words out of my mouth, Brian. You were right.
you were never getting there, Seth. So.
I know.
I think the beauty of the film is Brian's not wrong, Gigi's not wrong, Seth's not wrong. Anybody that reviewed the film and seen it, it's not wrong, because it's, you know, it's just like Lamb. You know, I mean, I don't know how many people have seen Lamb, but you can interpret Lamb 9,000 different ways. Like, it's just one of those movies, or like Under the Skin, or Mulholland Drive. Like, I think it's a Lynchian style, razor sharp script that gives you so many different interpretations. Like, to the fact we're recording an hour-long podcast talking about it, and there's a million other movies that we're not going to sit and talk about because they're not a conversation piece. You know what I mean? So that
Yeah.
like adds to my rating of it. You know what I mean?
I'll be
No,
surprised if we
100%.
keep this
Draw
an
field.
hour, if I'm honest.
I know, seriously. So, okay, let's break up our spoilers into like into segments. So the first half of the movie, let's discuss our feelings about the first half, because I feel like without a doubt that is obviously the strongest part of the movie. Do we all agree? Do we all agree that the first part of the movie is like,
Yeah.
because I know Chuck, like he loves the third, and I had no problems with like the third act, like when we start seeing stuff and the message, but like, dude, that first act, incredible. So how
Chuck
did
loved
we?
it. Chuck
I
loved it so
agree.
much. I heard him and Sid talking the entire movie. I'm gonna stab you next time I sit in the movie with you.
It was, and listen, and shout out to Sydney Horror Chronicles, because she made my enjoyment of the movie so much better, because it's rare to watch a movie like that perplexing and convoluted with somebody that like is having a similar experience. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like it's like when you go with 10 people to the theme park to ride a roller coaster, there's probably only 2 people that you want to sit next to that are going to enjoy the ride as much as you. So like to see her mannerisms in her face and like how it was affecting her, you know what I mean? Like it just, because I was feeling the same thing. So it was like it was a weird experience, you know. And maybe, who knows, if I would have went to see it by myself, I might have had a whole different interpretation of it, but I don't think so. And yes, the beginning is fucking masterful, because you're drawn into Mr. Reed, and he just pulls you in, and you almost want to do anything that he says. And even though you know something's up, like you still want to trust him, because he pulls it off so good.
I love the conversation about Mrs. Reed. I
Mhm.
thought that was such a powerful like part of the movie, where he's like, obviously when they first come in and they're like, okay, is Mrs. Reed here? And he's like, yeah, let me go get her. And like the audience is like, obviously, like she's
Yeah.
not going to be here. But I thought that was so smart, but I do feel like it's going to rub people the wrong way, certain audiences with beliefs and stuff like that.
Oh,
But I thought it was such a brilliant question, where he was like, are you just believing that she's here because I keep telling you, despite all the signs that she's not here? And I was like, oh, that one, like, it just hits so fucking hard.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've gone through 17,000 comments from people from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and Mormons that they're not allowed to enter the house unless there's a woman there. And like they explain that in the film, because
Yeah.
he has such charm that they question, like, you know, they're trying to pull him into their church and convince him that this is the way. So they don't want to denounce what he's telling them to believe in either, because if they do, then they're basically counteracting what they're trying to do, because they want him to believe. So they give a little bit of faith and believe in him, which again is
Yes.
brilliantly fucking done.
Yes. It's very well thought out. And I thought that was so I just thought that was so brilliant. I want to talk about the very poignant part of the movie of the board games, the religion, and the music, because that is going to stick with people forever. How did you feel about that little segment where he's going through everything?
I was hooked in, like it was like really in, like I would. The only thing that kept bothering me, kept on saying iteration, and I was like, is iteration the right word? But that's just that's a minor thing. But the way he was like this, I didn't know that like Judaism was first, and then everything else came after that. So I was like, okay, this is. But that's an issue in that I just took his word for it. That could be utter bullshit, because I'm just like, for all I know, Muslim came first.
Hmm.
So I like the way he explained that, but the music thing, like we've known about that music thing for years, that all the
Yeah.
songs you just say melodies, and like there's 3 notes that you play them in the right order, people are going to find it catchy. So I thought it was really interesting, but there was nothing there that would convince me that if I had faith, nothing he said would be like, yeah, okay, actually, you know what, I'm questioning what you've said now.
Yeah.
Nothing was that convincing. I think he could have done arguments that would have convinced me. Those just didn't hit as hard. I thought they were really good, but I don't think they were very powerful. If that
Okay.
makes sense.
Yeah. No, that does. Seth, how did you feel about it?
I fucking loved it.
Mhm.
That was my favorite part of the movie, honestly. I loved the discussion and like comparing it to board games and then adding in the music. I just thought that whole section was just like beautifully written, and how they like he describes religion. I thought it just affected me in like a different way, and I really really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you because I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school all my life up until I was a senior in high school, and now I don't really practice religion. I don't really, like, identify with a certain religion, and so when he, like, broke it down so simply to be like,
Hmm.
"Okay, everybody makes religion to be very, like, deep and convoluted, or like you just like don't understand, but then to and this is not to knock anybody that has belief, you know, but then to kind of like be like, okay, well, let me put it into terms where you clearly can understand it. I also like that we learned a lot during the movie. I
Hmm.
was like, I had no fucking idea about this game that came before Monopoly.
Right.
So I was like, I am learning a lot in here. And I thought that was great because it really does make you think like, well, what's so different about my, my religion if it's like the same iteration, which I do feel like iteration is the right
It
word because
is.
I yeah. Because, but it's like, of all these different iterations. But I also love that the movie did not take sides because at first that was the point in the movie where I realized it did not take sides because I
Hmm.
was like, "Oh," I was like, "Anybody that has faith is gonna fucking hate this movie because it is clearly like your religion is fake. This is all fake, blah, blah, blah." But then Sophie Thatcher, her character pops up and is like, well, you didn't take into consideration with like, Judaism where it's like the Holocaust and people were persecuted, or like with like Muslims and Jesus' resurrection and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, I was like, this is brilliant because they did not take a side. And it was like we were kind of left in the middle to be like, hey, it's just how people feel, and they do say that in the movie. It like
And
Chloe's character was like, "It's just how you feel. It's a
I
feeling."
I love too that it's like kind of like to back to your point where it was like an interpretation. It's like each version of religion was like taken from an original version, and it's like it's different for each, like, Christianity, Muslim, things like that, but it's all coming from the same place, and it's how you interpret it, which is kind of like similar to the movie. It's like each person's going to take something different from this movie, just like they're going to take something different from religion. And I thought that was a really cool like tie-in.
Yes, absolutely. I just thought that was like so brilliant. So
There's so
sorry, I
many
think we're done,
there's
Brian.
there's so many theories too of everybody's different interpretations of the film, because there's a lot of people that think that his wife was alive and that she like aided him and helped him and just like cut out of the frames, because like how could he do all that stuff by himself? Like, did she really bake the pie? I don't know if I buy into that. I don't think she was there. I'd rather
Mm-mm.
believe that she wasn't there.
Yeah.
But it also has that, you know, slow camera angle onto that poster of Dante's Inferno and the sixth level of
Yeah.
hell. And that is for people that are heretics that don't believe in, they believe in things opposite of like Christianity. And like that was basically, the challenge that was, put out there by Mr. Reed, just on the whole entire thing of faith. So it has that whole entire like element of them spiraling into hell because they're questioning, and they're not just, they're constantly questioning their faith, but not to the point of like being succumbed to be like in hell. Because even at the end, whenever she's in, dying, he tells her to pray. So like
Mhm.
not only is the theme of control from the first frame to the very end of the movie, like the because he controls the narrative. They
Mhm.
question the narrative, but they don't know what to believe because they're not questioning their faith, but they're at least perplexed enough to listen to what he has to say that it's affecting them. So there's different scenes that pop up, especially when he tells her to pray, and she does, because she just has that blind faith in her faith that this is what got me here and this is what can save me. Just praying because that's what they believe. But the element of control from the beginning of the setup, how he pushed them through there, milled them through every room. It's almost like he knew exactly where they were going to go and where he needed to be. And there was that sense of control. So that juxtaposed to the Monopoly games, the fucking the fast food chains, the way he explained all that stuff, that way it was all everything like displayed what control is and how these things and narratives control it, while the viewer is being controlled by Beckenwood's narrative all the way to the very end. Then the butterfly, then they roll the song that brings it all together, which has that element of control. So it's so fucking brilliant. Like if I like just sit there and just try to break every single little piece apart of like how methodically well done it is for what they're trying to convey to you, and to explain something to Gigi and explain something to Brian or explain something to Seth. Obviously, they're all three going to miss, or they're going to understand me in a different way. But what the film does, and what the film does, but it still has the same underlying meaning. You know what I mean? So like, and they knew that. They knew exactly what they were doing when that credits rolled, that people were going to walk out of here and somebody's going to think they're dead. Somebody's going to think that she survived. Somebody's going to think that. But the thing of it is like the whole entire thing was about control from the beginning to the end.
And I mean, you can even take it one step further where it's like, oh, it's all about control. I mean, even the poster, it's like, well, he's playing God. And that was like his whole thing that he was trying to also kind of denounce, where he's like, or not really denounce, like both. I get it's both, like denounce, but also prove, where he's like, there, I am just one being controlling everything. And I mean,
I don't know if anybody noticed it, but I'm gonna have to watch it again. But I did read a thing that said when he was carving those two little wooden statues, that he had one in his hand and it was like a male. And whenever he was carving it, he pulled a piece off the side of it and then started carving the woman, which was like a reference to like Adam and Eve and the creation of the world. And like, I didn't catch that at first, but when I read it, I was like, I don't doubt that this is in there, because it is fucking brilliant. Like an idea to me is like another little clue, because it's full of like these just little clues and little caveats that just keep wrapping you in there.
Oh, 100%. And speaking of which, we'll go into the second act, because I feel like that's where I think it does lose some people, is like the second act, closer to the end of the second act, like leading into the third. But you were talking about the song that wraps all together. I thought that was so incredibly smart when the credits roll and they're starting to play that song, and you think it's going to be the very popular song with that melody. I can't think of the name. And then you're like, oh,
Fade Into You.
Yeah. You're like, this
Sophie
is not
Thatcher.
the song. Yeah. And you're like, oh, okay. You're like, that was a nice little touch. So
I got goosebumps from it.
yeah, I thought that was I was like, oh, that was brilliant. Okay, but the second act. So let's go into, Brian, I want to hear your thoughts on the second act, as far as, because that's where you said that it kind of lost you, right? Like that's where you had your problems with it. So what were your problems with the second act?
So again, problems are maybe not right. Maybe this is just me in between my like belief and non-belief. So it got a little, I don't want to say convoluted, but obviously we've not mentioned the woman that comes out, have we?
Yeah, no. So that's kind of what I want to get into, because in the second act, I guess we'll do a spoiler recap. The second act, they drop down into the basement, through the belief and disbelief doors, but it all leads to one, which is this like dungeony area. And it's revealed to us that Hugh Grant has this a prophet. It's like the one true prophet, and it's this weird veiled lady who is kind of able to tell them what happens after you die. So segue into what you have to say.
So that bit, like that's when it, like at first I was like, oh god, it's gone into some kind of like Bagman type horror movie, no, Baghead type horror movie, and I was like, oh no, it didn't, thankfully. And then obviously she eats the poisoned blueberry pie, I assume, which does exist. Like, how did he know blueberry pie was going to be their favorite? Anyway, it's just had faith and assumed.
He's God, dude. Just kidding.
Yeah, maybe. Imagine that was a twist.
He doesn't like pie.
But it wasn't that it wasn't that he knew that they were going to like blueberry pie. It was his sense of control of the situation and the smell of the blueberries that got into their mind, and he led them to believe that they just loved it that much.
Or that the mom was there, or the wife was there. That's what it was. Yeah.
Like that just felt like, if you're saying that he controls all that, fair enough, but also it's kind of very convenient control, because she could have said, oh man, I fucking hate blueberry pie. And then you'd be like, oh shit, hold on, I'm going to come back. And he comes back with a cherry candle like what was
That's fair.
That is
unless
fair. Somebody
one
came out with
question-
cherry pie, I'd be like, no, fuck that.
Yeah,
That's the
absolutely
grossest
not.
pie out there.
Yeah.
one question I have then before we get into more. So if he's controlling everything, the girls at the very start that stop them for the selfie and pull down our shorts and say like, yeah, do you wear magic underwear? Because that obviously he references magic underwear later. Were they in on it? Like, did he make them do that? Or is magic underwear a thing in the Mormon faith?
I actually have no
I
idea.
don't really want to Google
I thought
magic underwear.
I thought magic underwear was more of a reference to like chastity belts because of, and I don't know anything about the Mormon religion or anything like
Me
that,
neither.
but I do think it's a thing that they're not supposed to have relations with people until they're like married or whatever.
Yes.
It's
Which is
something
fine.
like
I
that.
just don't know if it's a common term because obviously he uses that term.
Correct.
Yes.
And they use that term, and it's
I'm
just like,
Googling it.
did he influence the girls? So he's had control all this time. Like he influenced the girls, and he knew she was going to be sad because obviously she got pantsed. And it's like, is that how far his control goes, or is it just a convenient phrase? And if he hadn't have said magic underwear that we'd heard earlier, you wouldn't have got stabbed in the throat, and this control would have been very different. Like it's just, I don't know how far back this control goes, and a lot of it just feels awful. Oh, that was a coincidental control he had.
The magic underwear that Mormons wear are called temple garments, and they are worn by adult members of the church who have made sacred promises of fidelity to God's commandments and the gospel of Jesus Christ in temples of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So it is a very well-known topic called magic underwear.
Magic underwear. But also the only time, because a thing too, Brian, that you do have to remember, like, is that yes, like she got pants, but I thought that was fucking hilarious that she got pants. I was like, nice.
That was great.
But like, is that when Sophie Thatcher's character tells Chloe East, like, okay, when I say magic, when the secret word is magic underwear, that means you stab him. We obviously know that there was cameras and microphones in the basement because he's talking to them in the cameras and the microphones, and they're talking back to him. So I kind of just took it as like, oh, like he probably heard like, oh, it's just as, and also I guess if it is very common and we just don't know that in like Mormonism that is like a thing that he just like happened to say it, but it could also be like, well, he was listening to them the whole time they were down there.
Yeah, and I don't know if he set up that whole entire thing with the pantsing of her, but the whole entire
I don't
thing,
think so.
No, me neither. But the whole entire thing was set up because he's the one that mailed into them to have them knock on his door. He filled out a request to have them come.
Oh, yeah.
It was premeditated.
So, one thing that's confusing me then, this is maybe second version in the third act, is who were these prophets and the women in cages? And like, were they people that showed up at his door before, or who were they?
Okay, so this is a question that I had too. So I felt that the prophets were people that showed up at the door before, because he even said it kind of goes back because Chloe East's character is like, is saying like, okay, you're keeping these women in cages. And he's like, well, no. He goes, they wanted to be here. So I feel like the way that I kind of interpreted it was that these were people that came to the door before, and he was able to control situations to make them believe that like they were supposed to be there, or like everything was like going to be safe, or that like their faith would like save them or something. And that like he very much like, I feel like John Kramer-esque, where he's like, well, no, they kind of made that choice like on their own. And so that's what I kind of thought was like, they made the choice to be in there, maybe like off of their blind faith or something. And then he did all the things to like keep them vulnerable to where then he was able to still control that narrative. And because I did like the comment that he makes where she's like, oh, but you're like keeping them in these cages. And he goes, well, no, they went in there on their own. And then she's like, okay, but you're keeping them like sick and you're not taking care of them. And he's like, oh, well, I put like a little bit of like, he sprays the water on them to keep them all cold and like nasty and stuff, because he's like, well, when you keep them vulnerable enough, then any little morsel that you give them makes you able to control them. And he's like, kind of like how when your people go and give Bibles after like there's been hurricanes. And then he's like, then people will just kind of believe and, be lured into something because they're vulnerable in that moment. And so I thought that those people had just been like other missionaries that have come to the door that just happen to be led into this situation because of their faith and because of him being able to control the narrative.
But to test their faith, he had to get one of them to believe that resurrection was real, so she ate the pie and would die, and then convince another one to go and move the body and then take her place. So they now know that she's dead, and if they still got to have faith that, look, there's clearly not resurrection, so what he's maybe told her, how did he convince somebody to die to prove that, like, his faith, that his one true religion is real? Like, were they that beat
Maybe
down, or maybe she was just like, you know what, I want out of this. Here's my opportunity because I'm
Or-
stuck in a cage.
maybe you could like interpret it a different way too, where it's like the ones that are still down there did come back to life, and maybe that the person didn't believe that she could come back to life, and that's why that one died.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, that it did get a little I won't lie, like, that part did get a little bit confusing to me. Also the part where he was talking about, um because I do think that this part of the movie and I think it very well could be purposefully meant this way, where because even Chloe East's character is like, "Well, now you're like you're waffling, like, like you're kind of like improvising here because you didn't know." And it does feel like that almost in the tone of the movie where you're like,
Mhm.
I don't know, that kind of does feel like they don't really know what the fuck they're writing right now. But I think that that was like actually very purposeful and like methodical, like you're saying, Chuck. But because when they were talking about the whole simulation thing, when he like draws that diagram on the table, I was like, what the fuck is he talking about right now? Like that part
Right.
We live in a
completely
simulation,
lost me.
bruh.
Yeah. What was the thing that was in her? The like metal
And
thing.
it's in like a
It's an
It's an-
IUD.
it's an
Or it's a, I'm
IUD.
sorry,
Okay.
it's a
Mhm.
yeah, it's a like a Nexplanon.
which,
Mhm.
like when he was pulling it out and he's like, "Oh, got it." He's like, "Oh,
Yeah,
nope,
it's
that's a vein."
gross.
I burst out laughing. That
Yeah.
was so funny.
Dude,
He's like, "Nope, that's your
that
vein."
part. Oh, that's a vein.
Yeah.
Oh, but it was so gross and funny
So
at the same
gross.
time. God, yeah, that was so good.
He had
Um,
perfect comedic fucking
Mhm.
timing.
Perfect.
Oh, like rocking, like comparing Jesus to Jar Jar Binks. It's like,
That
Yeah,
was
what?
the
right.
best fucking
What
thing
is
ever.
happening?
I'm glad you brought that up because that was like,
Singing creep, and it's just like, wow, Hugh Grant was the perfect thing
Yeah.
for
He
this
was
movie.
so good. So
It's
good.
so freaking good. But yeah, the simulation thing, I was like, I don't know what's happening here, but that didn't
Mhm.
even seem to really take any, real part in the movie except for it's just kind of he was like, I don't know, maybe this helps until Chloe East was like, okay, I actually like I know what's going on here.
Well, he had to
Because
get very lucky with Chloe East figuring it
yeah.
out because, like, she had to figure
Yes.
out, like, there's the water's now going into the ground, so you have to move the table, and then there's a trap door, and it's like, if you're if he like he's dropped. Not, I don't think his hints were good enough for somebody that's maybe a little naive to be like, I've got this figured out now. And then
Yeah.
like her character switched from like naive little, I'll do whatever you say, Sophie Thatcher character, to
Yeah.
I've now figured this out completely. I know you're full of bullshit. I'm going to call you on your stuff. Like it was just such a switch that
That's
Right,
it
what
but
felt.
that's
but
what I was saying too earlier. It was like I loved how like her growth throughout the entire movie like accumulates into this like her being this like badass and like understanding the situation that she's in and like not being that naive person that she was when she first walked into the door and becoming like a genius on the subject. I thought that was kind of cool.
right, but I thought that was like a representation of when she walked in the door in the first place, her faith wasn't as strong as she had thought it was whenever they knocked on that door. And then that moment when that switch flips is when, and that's how you believe in Christ or religion or anything. It's blind faith and you just give it all. And in that moment, you believe. And I think that was a representation of, okay, well, I wasn't really fucking sure. I thought I was, but like in that moment when she started to like figure it out, is when she decided to like give her full self to her faith. And I think that's why that happened that way. I
See,
think
that's
it
where
was very, very deliberate.
because Sophie Thatcher's character was the one that was portrayed to be the one that wasn't really, or was questioning her faith.
Yeah.
Right.
Whereas the other one was like, yeah, she's devout. She's been born into this. Like, obviously, Sophie Thatcher had the IUD in her arm. So is she like,
I think it was reversed. I think like I agree that it's like meant to be that like Sophie's character is the one that's like not really like fully in belief of it all. But I think that she was the one who was in belief and Chloe East's character wasn't. And that's why like you kind of like it unravels itself throughout the movie.
Right, because some people say they believe in something so much,
Yeah.
but then they really don't. Like, so she was doing more like lip service belief, and
Mhm.
then the other one like really had the true meaning in her heart. She just didn't know how to fully let herself go into
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
I kind of felt like it was a little bit going back to what she said because when they're sitting on the couch and he's questioning her like about like oh this and that and then she goes well it's just a feeling she's like it's just how you feel and he's like exactly and so I think when at the end of the movie when we go back and she's like well when you came in I saw that your hair was wet and blah 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 I think it just goes to show us where she's like I'm not a fucking idiot just because you think I'm meek and like I'm just like giving myself up to like the Lord and what my beliefs are doesn't mean I don't see how certain things can't be like questioned.
Mhm.
Like I
Valid.
obviously question certain things, but like I still it's a feeling that I have. And so I think that just kind of like confirmed like her character was just like she is very like devout in herself just because of how she feels, even though she can tell I understand why certain people may not believe it or may question their beliefs, but I don't.
Right.
So that's kind of how I took it.
Yeah.
Do you know what the best part of the whole entire movie is? Is that we
What?
sat here for 55 minutes and 39 seconds and nobody's right.
No, I know.
And I love that. I love the conversation that it brings. Like, even if this part was faulty or this was a little flimsy, or you could really question this one. Well, you could do that about any book that's written about faith in the world. You know, I mean, you could
Yeah.
read it and you could take it for face value, or you can question it. So, like, it conveyed it pretty fucking good if we're sitting here doing that. And that's just what I love. Like, I fucking
Yeah,
love it.
100%. It's such a movie that like sparks conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So the third act, because we're pushing an hour, so I want to get into the third act as far as like this is when it's like this is it goes crazy, and we have a lot of discussions about like what Hugh Grant was trying to tell them was like the one true religion, which is control. Because I want to rewatch the movie because I do still have questions about the prophet because I'm like,
Mhm.
were they really were they actually prophets or no? Was he just saying that they were because he was trying to prove to them that like, no, nothing is actually real. I'm just controlling the narrative of what they're telling you happens after death. I actually didn't understand if that was real or not.
Like, they
I
could
don't
just be random women. Like, I just assumed they were
it,
folk like other people he'd got to come at his door, like were religious. Well,
that
it might just be random women that have as food delivery ladies that he's just kidnapped.
yes.
I don't know.
No, but I'm saying, the people in the cages, like the ladies in the cages, are a representation of how much of a psychopath he really is. More like a
Yes.
sociopath because he's so intelligent. Like, I don't
Yes.
think any more. For me, I don't have to put any more thought into that. Like, it's just, you know, he's not a man of faith. His faith is control and killing. Like,
Yes.
he's a nut, and that was to ground you in the reality that this man who is so charming, talking about all these things, is a very dangerous person. And like, that's just all I took it for face value.
My question was like, did they actually see the afterlife or no? Because Sophie Thatcher does say, like, yes, I did die and I did see something very similar. So I was like, well, wait, did she actually are they actually people that have died? That's what I was like. I actually didn't understand that. Because Sophie Thatcher, she's like, yes, that is true. That's what happens.
She could have been faking, I guess, because she was like question everything. Like, so maybe she was like,
Yeah.
actually, yeah, that's exactly what I saw as well. So he's like, well,
Interesting.
so he's maybe now like, shit, maybe it is real.
Yeah. Yeah, no, literally. So I don't know, but so how did we feel at the end? But about the everything is control because okay, and I'm just speaking for myself again, a little disclaimer, this is nothing to do with people in religion. If you have certain like faiths or beliefs or anything, it's just coming out of being like a very like religious, not very religious, but just a part of like an organized religion and stuff. I thought the message was so brilliant. I loved the message because that's how I personally feel about religion, or just really anything that's organized. It's like it does have to do a lot about control, and we do end up with a lot of these questions about religion and like how things are allowed if if this person is supposed to keep you safe and X, Y, and Z. But that's just my personal beliefs on it. So when he was like, yeah, it's all about control, I was like, whoo. I was like, this is great. How did we feel? Seth, I want to hear from you.
Yeah, I actually feel the exact same way. So I grew up like Jewish, I had my bar mitzvah and all that. And over the years, I kind of like, we'll do like the high holidays and things like that. But I love the message, especially like going back to the Monopoly game, because it basically hit all of like what I've been thinking. Because as you guys know, I lost my mom, and this is something I texted Chuck. I lost my mom, I lost my best friend, and somebody else who kind of like raised me and my brothers growing up, all in the span of like 2 years. So like having something like that happen, and then having like faith, this movie like kind of like makes you question everything, but in like a very thought provoking way, and it affected me. Kind of like you said, it just like, I do believe in like religion, but I also like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but I just think it's like what they tried to show, like get their point across, touched me in a way that I don't think any other religious horror movie has done. And I just thought it was very, very touching and beautiful.
Yeah, agree. Brian, how'd you feel?
Like Control makes sense. Like when I was at school, like my mom claims to be a Catholic, but never been to church or anything. Just I think it's just her way of making me not swear. But we had to go to church in high school. But like we would try and run away and not go and things because like nobody, like it's boring going to church and
Yeah.
singing hymns. Like, nobody in high school wants to do that. So like I've never believed in a higher power. Like I like the idea of it, and I have no issue with people having that, and I will support people that are, as long as they're like nice with it and they're not arseholes and like
Yeah.
believe in what you want to believe in. But I didn't take the ending as a, oh, okay, that's made me question my faith, because I didn't have any faith, and it didn't make me think, oh, maybe this is real, maybe there is a higher power. So I thought as an ending, it was like a good ending, nothing particularly original. If I was just looking at it as a horror level, like I was like, okay, we've seen people do this kind of thing before. So I thought it was a solid ending, but I think I wanted something bigger, if that makes sense.
Okay. No, that's fair. I feel like Beck and Woods, the writers and directors, I'm like, I feel like they have a lot of religious trauma, because I feel like the thought process of this is, it comes from like, it resonates with people that have grown up religious or were like forced into a religion, or like, because these were questions that like me and my brothers had, because all me and my brothers all went through Catholic school our entire lives, and then now really none of us are religious. And so I'm like, I feel like these are the questions that you have where you're like, yeah, why is it that I have to beg like for it to have my prayers answered? Or like, yeah, why is it that like my best friend or this person that I loved so much like tragically died? Was that his plan? I'm like, so but again, that is just my personal belief, and these were questions that I did have all throughout my experience with growing
So
up
that
Catholic.
so that's why it makes me feel like it's kind almost surface level. Like it wasn't that deep, because like everyone probably has that thought. Like it's like
Oh,
what
yes,
happens when
everyone
we die?
questions at
What happens when
times.
we
Yeah.
die? And why does bad stuff happen to good people? And why do kids die or get cancer? All this kind of stuff. But I was wanting them to delve a little bit deeper. Maybe there's people that are really deep in their faith and they're like, you know what, these are really good questions. It's something for me to go away and might affirm my faith, or it'll make me
Yeah.
think about some. Maybe this isn't the right religion for me. Maybe it's a different religion. Like, what about Buddhism? Buddhism doesn't get mentioned in this whole movie, and it's what, the third biggest religion. Like
Yeah.
it's bigger than Judaism, but like fuck Buddhism, I guess. So like
They're like,
it
we
just
don't know enough about that. We didn't write it in here.
yeah. So it just felt like it was. I thought it was just kind of like, okay, this makes sense, but it was at a level that I could understand it. Maybe that was the reason. But I was wanting it to be like, you could definitely get deeper with your like with why he's so questioning everything. Could be more like, oh, fuck, that's.
I think in order to write something for the masses that is on a deep level, you have to put it in a package that is digestible by everybody, and that's why everybody has a different interpretation. And
Yeah,
like
fair.
I'm full in on the Control, because, and I respect anything anybody believes in or whatever you choose to praise or all that like that. So I'm speaking about me, and I'm entitled to speak about me. I also grew up like Gigi, and I had to go to church every Sunday, and we had to go to Ash Wednesday and genuflect and do all these things. And then I'll never forget it. I was standing in front of our Catholic church with my sister after our parents just dropped us off. And it dawned on us, hey, we practice this, but how comes they don't go? I remember asking my sister, like, how comes they don't come into church? And that was the last time that I went to church. I was like 11, because it was just like, oh, this is the best thing in the world for me. Why aren't you doing it?
Yeah.
But the reason that they were doing it was a sense of fucking control, because it kept us in line and gave us good values. Like, it's not right or wrong. It's a set of values to listen to in order to, be a better person. And like, I totally respect that. But like, that's what made it hit even harder for me, because I could relate on a lot of levels to the control aspect of it.
It's funny you say that too, because like I did Hebrew school. Like every Sunday we had to go to Hebrew school, and like we'd have Torah readings and things like that. So I definitely was in the same boat as you, where it's like we would get dropped off and we'd have to do that. Although my
Like,
mom
what
was in the choir.
Aw. And one thing, like, kind of speaking on this, what I thought was so interesting, because it's like, I don't doubt certain people. I'm such a believer in, like, anything could be out there. Like,
Mhm.
if somebody was like, "Oh, yeah, God does exist," I'm like, Maybe, who knows?" Like, And so I think there are moments in life when people are like, "Oh, maybe this is like divine intervention." I don't know. But one thing that they kind of did touch on that in the movie, and again, this goes back to Chloe East's character, because when he's like, "Oh, pray for me," and she's like, "Well, prayer doesn't act. It's already been. There's an experiment on it, the Great Prayer Experiment or whatever." When she was like, "It didn't change anything," but she said, "I think that it's nice that people think about other people," and I was like, "Dude, hell yeah!" Because that was another thing that I was like, I personally don't believe in like a higher power, or like or God. Like, I don't know if there is a higher power, but I don't believe in God and certain like organized things. And yes, I think a lot of it is control, but sometimes you don't know if there is things out there, and it is nice. Sometimes it's like when you don't have
Right.
anything left, it
Yep.
is nice to think maybe there is something out there. And I like that they threw that in there, where she's like, it's just nice. It's nice to think about other people. It's nice to think maybe there is something out there that'll help you. And I was like, dude, yeah, I think there are people out there that are like that do question their faith. And they're like, but I don't know. There's nothing else. So why not? Like, why not just think maybe there is
Go
something?
ahead, Chuck.
Well, what Gigi just said, that if you're listening to this podcast, rewind what she just said for the last 42 seconds, because what she just said is Heretic in a nutshell. Because we could be wrong. You could be wrong, Gigi. Maybe there is something out there and we don't know.
Yeah.
And the way that you just described that is exactly what this film conveys to the viewer. Like, you don't fucking know. And nobody's right and nobody's wrong. And that is brilliant.
Yeah, the movie made me, honestly, it was like everything that I've been thinking about like religion and things, but it like it puts it out in such a great way that I don't know. It's such a great movie. Go see it, guys. Go see it.
Can I just ask one really quick question?
Yes.
No.
What was with the spider?
I love spiders.
Oh, I don't know. That was so fucking random when it pops out of the little tube.
Yeah, like a little jump scare with a spider, and then she's just so cool. She's just like, "Oh, it's just a spider."
Just a spider, dude.
And I was like, "What?"
I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, something is gonna happen. No, and that was just, they were like, oh, let's put a fucking spider in here.
Yeah.
I think it was just a spider.
And it was like a cute spider too. It looked like one of those like Pixar ones, but I don't know.
I thought they were going to link it
hilarious.
back, because obviously there's a butterfly at the beginning that Sophie
Yeah.
Thatcher sees flopping around. It's like, is that butterfly really there, or did that just blink out of existence as well?
I mean, it metaphorically could have been indication of the web that they were entangled in comes from a spider, but I think that's really overthinking it.
Really.
They were like, no, we just really like spiders.
Here's a fucking spider. We know Ray don't like spiders. Here's a spider.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, thank you guys for listening. Heretic comes out in the US in cinemas November 8th. So go watch it. It's really great. I love this one. I think it's going to take the world by storm. It's a very conversational movie, as you can tell, since this is over an hour long podcast about it. But thank you for listening. As always, we are on all the major podcast platforms. We are also on YouTube. Please go subscribe, throw our videos on a playlist, and just keep them on loop, because we are trying to be able to have an established YouTube. That would be great. Let us know how you feel about Heretic. We're trying to be better at clipping some of our podcasts and putting them out there. So we will be doing that for Heretic definitely because it's very conversational. And we also have a Ko-fi in case you feel so inclined to support otherwise, but just listening, sharing, liking, favoriting, rating helps us. We love you guys. Question everything. Stay haunting. Bye.
Bye.